Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our annual Earl Lloyd Sports Legacy Symposium presented by the Hyde Family Foundation. I'm Grizzlies television play-by-play announcer Pete Pranik. It's my honor to once again MC this fantastic event. I'd also like to welcome all of our viewers at home watching on Fox Sports Southeast, the television home of the Memphis Grizzlies. Today, as we have every January for the last 17 years, we pay tribute to athletes who have made significant contributions to both civil and human rights. Today's honorees have laid the foundation for future leaders through their careers in sports while embodying the spirit and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. We're proud to partner once again with the National Civil Rights Museum to host not only today's symposium, but an entire series of events this holiday weekend that provides a forum for critical dialogue that not only honors Dr. King's legacy, but continues his life work that remains undone. For as Dr. King once said, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. By way of introduction, let me welcome the President of Business Operations for the Grizzlies and FedEx Forum, Jason Wexler.
Thank you, Pete. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today for the annual Earl Lloyd Legacy Symposium at our 17th annual Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration Game. Before we begin today, I'd like to thank all the partners who have helped make today's events possible. Our co-host, the National Civil Rights Museum at the Lorraine Motel, the City of Memphis and Shelby County, our title sponsor for today's game, Ford and your Mid-South Ford dealers, today's symposium sponsor, the Hyde Family Foundation, and our associate celebration and game sponsors, FedEx and Ashley Home Stores. On behalf of the Grizzlies organization, I would also like to welcome today's honorees, NBA staff and officials, and the New Orleans Pelicans, and thank them all for their support of this weekend in the museum. Today's game versus the Pelicans tips off at 4:30, but we encourage fans to get to their seats early so they can enjoy the presentation of the National Civil Rights Museum Sports Legacy Award to this year's honorees. And at halftime, fans will have an opportunity to enjoy a performance by Grammy Award-winning singer and songwriter Anthony Hamilton. Additionally, throughout the plaza-level concourse today, the Grizzly Foundation's youth mentoring community partners will be available to answer questions and discuss opportunities to become a mentor as part of our MLK Day Mentor Recruitment Fair. As we celebrate the 90th birthday of Dr. King today, the annual tradition of honoring his legacy is a point of pride for our entire organization. We work to bring awareness to and support for the National Civil Rights Museum's drive to deepen our understanding of the ongoing movement for social and economic justice that Dr. King defined in life and in death. The Grizzlies are pleased and thankful on this day every year to be able to ignite a conversation that both reflects on from where we have come and reminds us of how much remains to be accomplished. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason. Those of us who live here in Memphis know that the National Civil Rights Museum is a gem, and visitors to Memphis have come to explore and be impressed. It's an integral partner and collaborator in our celebration, and I'd like to welcome its president, Terry Lee Freeman, to the podium.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Pete. The National Civil Rights Museum is again proud to host this symposium, and we are proud to hold up the memory and celebrate the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. This year, Dr. King would have turned 90 years old. Now, in some ways, he would be overjoyed with the progress we've made. In other ways, I'm sure he would be disappointed and somewhat shocked that we've not learned from some of the lessons of history. But one thing I am sure of is that he would commend this year's Sports Legacy honorees as some of the best in their field. And he would be encouraged by the role models that Chris Bosh, Wayne Embry, Candace Parker, and Bill Walton provide for our youth. Thank you for showing us what excellence looks like, and thank you, Memphis Grizzlies and the NBA, for continuing to keep Dr. King's legacy alive.
Terry, thank you so much for your leadership with the museum and all you do, not only for the museum, but also for this weekend celebration. We're going to pause here for a short break, and we will begin our conversation in a few moments. was the only player at the time of his retirement to be named NBA MVP, NBA Finals MVP, and NBA Sixth Man of the Year. He won the NBA championship with the Portland Trail Blazers in 1977 and was also the Finals MVP. He won the 1985 championship with the Boston Celtics, and at UCLA, under Coach Wooden, he was a member of 2 NCAA championship teams and a 3-time recipient of the NCAA Player of the Year award. In 1990, he began a career as an NBA commentator working for NBC and the LA Clippers before joining ABC ESPN as their lead analyst in 2002. In 1991, he received the NBA Oscar Robertson Leadership Award, and in 2002, he received the NBA Retired Players Association Humanitarian Award. In 1999, the NCAA honored him with their Silver Anniversary Award for having made significant professional and civic contributions since he completed his intercollegiate eligibility 25 years ago. Involved with over 50 charities, he focuses special effort on the community that raised him. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend Bill Walton. Our second honoree is a 2-time NBA champion, an 11-time NBA All-Star, and an Olympic gold medalist. He has achieved multiple basketball accolades in his 13-year NBA career, 11 consecutive All-Star appearances, the Olympic gold medal as part of Team USA in Beijing. For the Miami Heat, he went on to appear in 4 consecutive NBA Finals, winning 2 championships. He established a foundation in 2004 to help youth in academics and athletics. This foundation has worked closely with local organizations to raise important funding for community projects. An avid reader, he regularly speaks to groups of children about the benefits of reading and has received the NBA Community Assist Award for his active contributions in that field. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Bosh.
Here, here. Yeah.
Selected first overall in the 2008 WNBA draft by the Los Angeles Sparks, the St. Louis native is the only player in WNBA history to win both the WNBA Rookie of the Year and Most Valuable Player awards in the same season. She added another MVP award and an All-Star Game MVP in 2013. She won a WNBA championship in 2016 and was the Finals MVP as well. She also has 2 Olympic gold medals from 2008 and 2012. She led the Lady Vols to back-to-back national championships in 2007 and in 2008. She also became the first female analyst in March Madness history when she co-hosted Turner's studio shows during the 2018 NCAA men's basketball tournament. Off the court, she's on the board of the Pat Summitt Foundation, where she is devoted to helping find a cure for Alzheimer's and acts as an advocate for the Alzheimer's Association, PETA, Loaves and Fishes, the March of Dimes, DARES, the Ronald McDonald House, and No Kid Hungry. And our last honoree,
Wait, we have a clap for
Candace
her.
Parker.
Pete, please. Take a deep breath. It's okay.
Okay. I appreciate that, Bill.
Best player in the park.
Our last honoree is a 5-time NBA All-Star who led Miami of Ohio to conference championships and 2 NCAA tournament appearances. The St. Louis Hawks drafted him 22nd overall in 1958. He was selected to the All-Star team 5 straight seasons between 61 and 65 and eventually retired in 1968, but not before winning a championship with the Celtics in 1968. He became the first African-American NBA general manager with the Milwaukee Bucks in 1972. He's also been the general manager in Cleveland and in Toronto. He's been a founder and CEO of multiple businesses and a member of multiple nonprofit and corporate boards of directors, active in the community and a mentor for youth in every city in which he has lived and worked. He has been a trustee of the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame since 1974 and was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1999. Welcome, Wayne Embry.
All right, Wayne Embry.
I should also point out,
And the only guy here today, Wayne, who's older than I am.
and I should
Not
also
by
point,
much.
and I should also point out, he drafted my good friend Brevin Knight to the Cleveland Cavaliers.
All right.
So quality recognizes quality. What I want to do is start as kind of our baseline here is to give me a sense of when you became aware of Dr. King, his philosophies, and kind of what you took away from it. And Candace, you're the youngest, so I'm going to start with you.
Oh. Growing up, my parents, we always had conversations about things that were going on in the community. And when I would study, in social studies or in history, I would come home and we would discuss the things that we were learning about in the history books. And, I became aware at a very young age about Dr. Martin Luther King and his contributions and just his ability to inspire others. That one man really continues to inspire so many leaders of tomorrow. And obviously being here this weekend, just going through the tour with the museum, it really was a unique opportunity for me because I was able to share it with my mom as well as my daughter. So we had three kind of generations of really taking in the contributions of Dr. Martin Luther King.
Chris?
Well, with my family, we were always very into history, especially the civil rights movement. And at the time, I was kind of joking around yesterday as we were touring the museum that we went to many places. I've been to these places. I've been to Selma, Alabama. We used to have our family reunions in Selma, Birmingham, Montgomery, ground zero for the movement. So we were always educated on those times and the history of those times and everything. And, Dr. King was always the most prominent figure spoken about because of his beliefs in, nonviolence and his practice and his philosophy. So throughout all of these marches, throughout history, my parents made sure that we knew his name, knew who he was, knew who he stood for, and that started the platform for us kind of learning really about the whole civil rights movement, but who, Martin Luther King was as a man and as a preacher.
Bill, you came of age during the civil rights movement, so
I was so lucky, Pete. I'm not as lucky as Chris here. I grew up in San Diego. He got to spend his time in Selma and Birmingham and Montgomery. But the fact that my dad, who was a social worker, an adult educator, and a music teacher, my mom was a librarian, and I came across all my childhood heroes between 1960 and then when they started getting killed. And so here I was, little Billy with his red hair and his freckles and his big nose and his goofy, nerdy-looking face and his horrendous speech impediment. But like Chris, I love to read. At an early age, I found Chick Hearn on the radio calling Wayne Embry's games. And then, not too long after that, I came across Martin Luther King. Then not too long after that, I came across Bill Russell and Muhammad Ali, and it was all right there in this whole world that I would see these people. Now, Bill Russell, he didn't speak very much, but when he did, wow, the hammer came down. And then with Chick Hearn and Martin Luther King, these were guys, and Muhammad Ali, these were guys whose brain and their mouth were in perfect sync. And so I was like, that's what I want to be. Because as a lifelong stutterer, not being able to talk at all, I would look at these iconic figures, people who did everything that I dreamed about, and they became my heroes. And then too many of them, Bobby Kennedy, Jack Kennedy, Martin Luther King, John Lennon, they all got killed. And it was just a terrible, terrible thing in my life. It changed me forever.
Wayne, you have a very particular connection to Dr. King because your wife and your teammate Oscar Robertson's wife marched with Dr. King in Selma. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, yes. Having lived through that era and watching at the inception of the civil rights movement led by Dr. King and others, I, of course, paid particular attention to it. And the March on Washington, unfortunately, I was unable to attend, but I nevertheless watched it on television, and it was quite inspirational. And to speak to my wife and Oscar's wife, we were on the road. I think we're in Philadelphia, maybe. It doesn't matter where we were. But phone rings, I answer the phone, and it's my wife. She says, we are going to Selma for the march. And I paused for a minute, and I said, you're going to do what? She says, we're going to Selma. And, of course, this was the second after the Black Sunday March, what had happened. And I says, no, you're not. We got 3 young children, and they need a mother, and you're not going. She says, yes, we are. Hung up. And let me back up a minute. Forrest Young says, now don't say anything to Oscar. Back in those days, fellas, we had roommates. And Oscar was my roommate. She said, Yvonne's going to call Oscar, so don't you say a word to him. So I hung up, phone rings, and same thing. No, you're not, Yvonne. And of course, you got to know Oscar to know how you probably heard him.
Yes, I have.
Yeah. And hung up, says, big fella, I think they're going. And sure enough, they did. And the next day, I get a call. Pete pick him up at the airport. And I went to the airport, and they were terrified. Getting off the plane, they were terrified. They, said they never experienced so much hatred and the attempted violence, stone throwing and sticks, and then 30 or 40 people in a truck to go back to the airport with tarps over them to hide them from perpetrators or anybody who wanted to do harm to them. So that was quite an inspiration to me that, she showed the courage to do that, and all the others that have done it. And I just regret that I didn't participate back in those days. I could have, but I was trying to make a living to take care of my family.
How difficult was it? Because I know I had a conversation with Oscar Robertson several years ago where this was still the era where there were white-only hotels and black hotels, and you were not always able to stay with your white teammates. What was that experience like of being separated like that?
Well, it of course, is very humiliating. And and forgive me, ladies and gentlemen, I may get emotional now thinking of that. Back in those days of going with your teammates and sitting in the restaurant waiting to be served and not being able to be served. And you sit there and eventually, we all get up and leave. Or going to a hotel and telling them you can't check in this hotel. Or going to a movie, you can't come in this movie. That was the way it was, and we kind of accepted it. So we needed someone with the courage of Dr. King to step forward and say, no more, we're going to fight for equality and justice for all. And so we all, of course, jumped on that because that's the way the world should be. Because, I was taught and learned years ago that respect is a key word. If you respect one another, we can make progress. If you disrespect, it leads to hostility and turmoil, which leads to hatred, and that could break down civilizations. And so I think I learned from Dr. King and moving forward to treat each human being with respect. And I adopted a philosophy years ago that if the only reason why you hate me is because of the color of my skin, that's your problem.
All of you as professional athletes and public figures. Charles Barkley once famously said, I'm not a role model, but yet you have high visibility. Is it a requirement? Is it incumbent upon you as a public figure and a professional athlete to be involved in social causes such as what Dr. King was involved in, Chris?
It's incumbent on us as human beings, not as celebrities or as basketball players or as broadcasters or as business people. That's the challenge for all of us. And if you don't accept that challenge, then go climb back under the rock where you came out of. And one of the things that I loved about Dr. King, and I don't know Candace or Chris as well as I know Wayne, but that whole generation of Oscar and Wilt and Elgin and Connie Hawkins and all these guys, and that was Martin Luther King. When they saw trouble, they went right to it, and they were willing to fight peacefully. You have to know how to bring the fight without actually resorting to the violence and the physical misbehavior. But that special talent and the willingness to put it all out there every single time, which a lot of us have learned through sports, but we learn it from other people. Wayne talked about, where do we get our hatred from? We learn that hatred. Nobody is born hating somebody else. And I respect Wayne Embry, and I respect Chris Bosh so much that I'm going to give him the stage that he was just offered by you.
You followed that.
Chris, I knew this was going to be a challenge for all of us.
I was going to say the same exact thing. That's crazy. Took the words right out of my mouth. But you know what? Just in my generation, I remember that commercial with Charles, and you know, with all due respect, I would disagree with him. Whether you like it or not, when we have the platform that we have, especially coming from where we've come from, we come from all different kind of backgrounds and everything, and just like what Bill said, sometimes when you see something that isn't right, you have to speak up about it. Otherwise, it just kind of, continues to avalanche into... If
you don't speak up, you're a collaborator. You're an enabler. You're empowering them. Sorry, Chris, for interrupting, man. Fired up, man.
What are you going to do?
Let's go.
What else? But no, I think it's important for us to set examples. We do have to set examples because children are watching. People are watching. And we have to make sure that we're representing our families, our backgrounds, our cities, the places that we come from respectably. And we can't continue to stay in one place.
Gotcha. Candace, I'm curious because during the Civil Rights Movement, it was about voting rights. It was about integration rather than segregation. Those were the big civil rights issues of the 60s. As you travel around the country, your experience as a woman of color playing professional basketball, what do you think are the civil rights challenges of 2019?
I hope at some point that there's 2 or 3 women sitting up here. That's what I hope. I think as an African-American woman raising a daughter, my definition of what a leader and what a role model looked like didn't always look like myself. And the more we cater to that in terms of women, yes, you have to be leaders for other women, but we can be leaders for young boys and men as well. And so I think those are the challenges right now, is just kind of finding that place and finding your voice to be able to be okay with leaders looking different, with people of color, doing different jobs as well. And so I think it's just the stereotypes of 2019 still are there, and we continue to have to break those down.
Voter suppression.
I'm sorry, Bill?
Voter suppression. Mm-hmm. And then economic injustice.
Okay.
The inability to get the opportunities to make a decent human living wage.
Well, and
I was struck when Jason, the president, and Terry were up here speaking with the preamble. Mm-hmm. And they mentioned the words human and civility. Those are 2 words that have never been associated with the name of Bill Walton before. But to see the incredible humanity that I've witnessed that the NBA has been able to create, to see the transition from in the streets in the 60s to the incredible celebration of life. But if we don't have the willingness to look at our fellow team members, our opponents, with the courtesy and the decency and the human respect that Wayne Embry is talking about, then what do we really have? And when you have these elections around the country, because the world is growing dark and mean before our eyes, in a world that is overrun with hypocrisy, deceit, dishonesty, and lies. And fortunately, I am part of the NBA family. Fortunately, I'm part of the most diverse workforce in the history of the world. And so we're all friends. And when we played against each other, we hated them. We wanted to fight them and kill them. But now it's all over. But I'm here in Memphis, and I'm surprised that they even let me off the plane to get in here from what we did to the poor Memphis State Tigers 46 years ago.
Bill, I vouch for you. I vouch for you.
I said
you were okay.
Okay. Good. When I got here and I got searched when I got off the plane, and I said I'm with Wayne Embry, and they said okay, that's fine. But I'm honored to have with me one of my great all-time teammates, Lionel Hollins, here with me today. And Lionel's in the audience, his wife Angie. And Lionel just instrumental in the evolution and the dynamism that is the NBA today, and I've learned so much from him. And I can remember when we were just getting started. I was 21 and Lionel was 20, 44 years ago. And I was in Oregon, because I come from California, and Oregon was like a really promised land for all of us. You, Pete, you were there, and the fans, they were on Lionel, and they were on Lenny, our coach, Lenny Wilkins. They were on him because of the color of his skin, and that's just like, what is going on here? Now, they changed as soon as Lionel started jumping over the top of John Havlicek and throwing it down in his face, but if that's what makes you change, who are you and what are you doing, and why can't we be better than this? And that's the life I want. I want a life. I want a life, and I want to be involved in everything that provides a possibility of progress. I want a life that is dedicated to serving the needs of others. And that was the life that Wayne Embry in his sacrifice gave me. And that was the life that Oscar Robertson and Bill Russell, all these incredible legends. And now to see all these guys and to meet the young guys back there in the weight room behind the scenes here for today's game. I mean, New Orleans and Alvin Gentry and Drew Holiday and Mike Conley, whose dad and I grew up together, and Marc Gasol and all these fantastic players. I mean, they get to celebrate, but the celebration carries with it a responsibility and a duty to move it forward and to keep going in every single encounter that you have. Well, what was your question now?
I'm going to get back to Chris in a moment about education and opportunities. But Wayne, I want to talk to you because you were the first African-American to be a general manager in the NBA. I was going through the media guides, and we're still a little short, really, on high basketball executives of color. You were the general manager of the Milwaukee Bucks in 1972. Breaking through that barrier, were there obstacles that you encountered because you were the first?
That I encountered 20 years later, which I won't go into detail because it can be pretty gruesome. But, when I was named general manager, it didn't dawn on me that I was black or white or Hispanic or Asian, or didn't dawn on me. I just was named general manager and I had a job to do. And then the next day at news conference, I was asked, did I see any significance in being the first? And I thought about it overnight, of course. And I reflected back to Jackie Robinson and what treatment he received, the inhumane treatment he received early on. And I was asked the question, do I see any significance in being the first? And I said that only if it is significant to others. And then I'm not the last. And so as time went on, I was embraced by many of the general managers in the league, and I felt very comfortable in doing it. And despite all the hate mail and that goes with it, I was able to persevere through, this is my 60th year, I think, in the NBA. Mm-hmm. And but I have no regrets. I'm grateful for those who came before me. We were at the Earl Lloyd Symposium, and Earl was a great mentor to all of us when we first came into the league. And be forever grateful for what he did. And of course, I played with Jack Twyman. And the Jack Twyman-Reese Stokes relationship, mm-hmm. which was one of the great humanitarian relationships in my lifetime. And so I was around people like that who inspired me, and hopefully, I dedicated my life, and I'm a lot older than these guys here, but hopefully I'm an inspiration to them and others to follow.
Having just been in Toronto, so many people came up to me and said, we are so glad that you're honoring Wayne because he's so deserving of this particular award. So your friends in Toronto speak glowingly of you, and rightly so.
Thank you. sorry what we did to you the other night, but
That's okay, Wayne. The Grizz took it out on the Lakers the other night, man, in Staples Center, man. Thumped them, man.
I want to get back to education and opportunity,
Right.
because, Candace, you were talking about opportunities, and education is a way, I would assume, to kind of break through some of this inequality. And, Chris, I know that education for you has been a prime focus of your foundation. Tell us more about that.
Let me start it with one comment. Racism is a result of ignorance, and you can take it from there.
were you, Chris, or are you?
Can you guys hear me? Hello? All right, can you guys hear me now? You couldn't hear me before?
So start again. Just start again from the beginning.
Thanks for filling in for me, Bill. I was wondering, You know what's funny about education? My parents were very big in education. So, we grew up in the inner city and all that stuff. And we would come home and we would talk a certain way, me and my brother. And before we even walked through the door, my father would no, speak English. Don't come in here talking like that. I need to understand you. Other people need to understand you. So that was one of the first big educational moments that I had. And then after that, I remember it was this distinct moment. I actually got Mavericks tickets. I got to go to a Mavericks game because I made the A honor roll. And at the time, it really didn't seem like a big deal. But when I saw like an actual NBA game at the time, it was in the old Reunion Arena back then. I just had this moment. And, I guess, basketball and education kind of ran together for me. And I kind of tried to be a good student and a good basketball player at the same time. But just access to education is everything. I mean, if you have the access to education, you can do more things. You know that there is no box that can hold you in. And one of the interesting things that I find with today's youth is that they have, all of us, let me not just say the youth, we have the internet now. And so that access to education, everybody has it. And so to be able to use that as a tool moving forward and to, do things and build things and create things and learn about things, I think that's a very, very powerful thing. And I don't think people really realize the power at their fingertips. So that's one of the things that I always try to implore to the young guys, old guys, my guys, whoever, is to make sure that education, is a prime thing that we need to talk about. And another thing that was funny, if a guy scores 20 points, 30 points in a high school game, he gets praised. That's wonderful. It's these brilliant kids all over the world that don't get any recognition, right? The future doctors and lawyers of the world don't get any recognition. These guys are probably going to cure cancer one day and nobody cares. So I always try to make sure that, I recognize people, young kids, old people, anybody doing these things, and, they need to be recognized for their accomplishments in education.
Candace, if a young person comes to you and says, I really need to create some opportunities in my life, whether it's in sports or elsewhere, what advice would you give them?
Just work hard, develop a passion. Everybody calls me crazy because my daughter's 9 years old, and I just want her to develop a passion for something. Because when you're passionate about something, you're willing to do whatever, however, to get there. Adding on to what Chris spoke about a little bit, I come from I have two older brothers. One of them played 10 years in the NBA. He actually was in Toronto, played with Chris, went on to Cleveland, got drafted earlier, played for Orlando, played for numerous teams. And my middle brother, he chose at 5 years old, he wanted to be a doctor. And people would come up to him like, what happened to you? Both of your siblings are, professional athletes and have, play basketball. What happened to you? And I'm looking at them like, only would he be the black sheep in a family of professional athletes. And so it's like we have to respect and honor those that are good at their craft. If you're solid or passionate about what you're doing and you're helping people and you're moving the needle forward, then I think we should celebrate and respect, everybody's talents.
Okay. So I'm going to disagree with Candace. on her opening statement, just work hard. Everybody works hard. If we don't think that the people in China and Thailand and Australia and Spain and Greece and Nigeria are not working hard and we're just going to work harder, we have to work smarter. And that's where education comes in, and that's where mentoring comes in. And Wayne is huge in that in his life. And Chris, I don't know, Candace, I'm sure you're out there as well, but there's never been a great player, team, organization, and company that didn't have a great leader. And the ability of young people to choose who their leader is going to be, who their hero is going to be, so that they can work smart. Train your mind, formulate your dream, choose a leader, join a team, immerse yourself in the culture, build your foundation, knowing that the strength of the team is the strength of the individual, and then the ultimate components of success in a group dynamic, which is honor, sacrifice, and discipline. If it was just hard work, nobody would ever fail. And you have to have a network. You have to have somebody that you can call no matter what the problem is. And the person to find is the person who's on their way back. So when I know Wayne Embry and I can call him up and I have a challenge, I have an issue, I have an obstacle that I can't figure out how to overcome, I can call somebody who's already done it. And that ability and the willingness to change each and every day, because you never know how the game of life is going to play out. Look at Chris Bosh. He's on his way to this spectacular career. He's got a health crisis, and bam, it's over. Now he's got a whole new life, and that's the mark of a great champion, and I salute you for that, champ.
Candace, you played for one of the all-time great coaches in Pat Summitt. Give me a sense of her mentorship and what being part of the Lady Vols and that legendary basketball program meant for you in your development.
I think when you go from high school to college, you think you're going to play a sport. And, you know, Coach Summitt was huge for women's basketball. Obviously, I think she was during that time when Title IX had just been enacted in 1972, and you know, she was about moving the needle forward. But, you know, obviously Bill played for a legendary coach as well, but it's not just about what's in between the lines. You know, she taught us how to be people far after the basketball stopped bouncing. And a lot of that had to do with just watching her drive, her effort, her energy. You know, she wasn't a big fan of tattoos, but when she got sick with Alzheimer's in 2011, you know, she called me and I was like, you know, Coach, you know, we're going to fight this, you know, whatever. And she's like, don't throw me a pity party because you're going to be the only one there. And so she was about just putting one foot in front of the other. And so I got that tattooed on my arm for her because,
God bless.
Yeah, she was huge in my life.
God bless.
The Grizzlies Foundation is very much involved.
Wayne, how many tattoos do you have? And what would it take you to get the next one?
I don't know, because Candace keeps telling stories like that. That might be it.
How about the stories at the hospital this morning? I mean, that was an incredible tour at St. Jude's, and that message of hope, which is really the message of the NBA, which is the message of Martin Luther King. It all rolls into one, because without hope, the dream will not happen.
And leadership, too. And part of that is mentoring. And Bill referred to your continued role wherever you have been a mentor. And so much of mentorship, even though your life has been sports, I'm guessing when people come to you, it's not strictly about sports issues. Give us a sense of your theory of mentorship and leadership for people who come to you for advice.
Well, you know, I've been blessed in a lot of ways. And I tell our players today when I talk to them at the beginning of the season, Chris has probably heard this, that that which I enjoy now is seeing others succeed. Because I've had, as I said, a very blessed life, and I'm very appreciative and grateful for it to all those who helped me along the way. And that which I like to see today is see these young people succeed. And, you know, we were talking about education a while ago and the importance of education. I went to a school which I was the only African American, and I wanted to be accepted. So I thought if I could excel on the basketball court that I would be accepted. Well, I was cut in my 7th grade. I was cut from the team, and that was devastating to me. I thought it was the end of the world. And so I continued to play intramural basketball and kept getting better and better. So finally, late in the afternoon, it was tournament time. Coach comes to me and says, "Wayne, I've been watching you. We're going to bring you to the varsity, the tournament." And I was just terribly excited about that. I just, I went home, and I grew up on a small farm, and we had a dirt court. I went there to practice till it got dark because I was looking forward to the next day and going to the game. Well, the last class of the day was English. So the English teacher asked me to hand my homework in. I didn't do it. She said, "You didn't do your homework." I said, "No." I said, I was so excited because I finally made the basketball team. I practiced, and I didn't do my homework. She says, "Well, you're not going to the game." And I said, "Well, wait, we'll go see about the coach, see what the coach got to say about it." So the coach came in. She told him what had happened. He reinforced what she said. Well, I didn't stop there. When I got home, my dad came home from work. My mom came home from work, and I told him what had happened. And she said, "You didn't do your homework?" And I hate to fresh memories. Some of us older people know what a switch is. But that made me realize the importance of education. It never happened again. So not only did I want to excel on the basketball court, I wanted to excel in the classroom. And I took great pride in being on the dean's list at college, and that more so than what I accomplished on the basketball court.
So Wayne talked about 2 of the 3 most powerful emotions for old people, which are pride, gratitude, but also loyalty. And the loyalty that we have to the NBA and various relationships that we have, that is not something that is static. That is not something that is in the past. It's something that extends to today and into the future. And when you have guys like LeBron James and Steph Curry and Kevin Durant as the 3 top players in the game today, and the champions and all the awards and all the honors and all the eyeballs and all the attention, and yet they're the ones like Oscar, like Wayne, like Wilt and Elgin and Bill Russell and Muhammad Ali, who were the greatest of their day. They were the ones who stood to the front, like Jackie Robinson, like Martin Luther King. And now we have these guys, and we have coaches. We have Greg Popovich, and we have Steve Kerr that stand up there and they say, "Hey, look, we're not going to buy into this nonsense anymore." And it's just absolutely fantastic. So the young people can look at these guys and say, "Wow, man, that's what I want to do too," because that was little Billy. I saw all those guys, and I said, "Yeah, man, that's what I want to do with the rest of my life. What am I doing here anyway? Why am I here in this chair? How did that work? I don't know."
Can I segue to Chris for just a second? Is that okay, Bill?
You can do whatever you want, man. I believe in freedom.
Okay, good. I'm thrilled to hear that.
Just remember that freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose.
Chris, you were not a contemporary of Dr. King, but you've been to the Civil Rights Museum. You know the stories. You've read. You've watched. If you had the opportunity to sit down with Dr. King and talk to him about race relations, social issues in 2019, if you could sit down over a cup of coffee, what would you want to ask him? What would you want to talk about?
Can you guys hear me again? All right. Well, I mean, me just kind of being a fan and a historian, I would just ask him why. Because I think it takes a strong person to go throughout those nonviolent, peaceful protests that he went through, and to continue to just try to, drive home that message, even though that wasn't the state of the times. They were in violent times, and he came with a message that was just way different than what was going on in the environment that everybody was living in. I would just really pick his brain about that first. And I would just pick his brain about what's going on right now, because I think right now we're living in a time where, people hide a little bit and kind of just, perpetuate the hate message in a multitude of different ways. And I don't know which is worse, being the fox or the wolf, or dealing with the fox or the wolf, And I would just, ask him for advice really on, how to move forward as a role model, as a father. I have, a lot of kids, as a black man in America, and not shying away from that. I think sometimes we feel that talking about those issues are a little taboo. And it shouldn't be like that. We should be able to state our case and, tell our stories and tell about instances that we've really been through, And I think getting a message from him and really just trying to pick his brain. I mean, to me, even though he's passed and gone, he's still a mentor. And there are things from his writings and his teachings that you can really learn from and really kind of take and apply to yourself.
Candace,
too many of us are comfortably numb. We have become one nation under sedation. And so my question to the good doctor would be, where do we go to find the courage? Where do we go to find the light? When you were a young man, Dr. King, what was it in your life that happened to you that showed you the path? I can point back because I know the moments in my life. I mean, it was when I saw Bill Russell stand up, when I watched those television and listened to those radio broadcasts of Dr. King, when I listened to Muhammad Ali and give his speeches, when he would come to UCLA, when he was barred from fighting, he was barred from his profession because he wasn't going to go over to Southeast Asia and kill people who had done nothing wrong to him. And so I want to know what it was in Dr. King's life that led him to that. I know what it was in Wayne Embry's life because I saw that and I lived it and I've learned from Wayne Embry. And I'm grateful and loyal and proud.
We have a couple minutes here. Thank you, Bill. A couple minutes, Candace. What do you take from your experience here in Memphis and being the recipient of this award as you go back to your community?
I think I take what you see as right at the time might be right in history, but might not be right at the time with civilization, with human beings. We sit up here and we talk about a lot of people that have been involved in the civil rights struggle. But a lot of times we negate a lot of the names and the individuals. I mean, and it's not on purpose. I mean, Mamie Till, we talk about Rosa Parks, we talk about other individuals that were influential in that struggle. And so I think it's remembering that everybody can be a leader, that it doesn't matter what you look like, what your gender is, where you came from, that everybody's capable of being a leader and doing what is right.
Wayne, your experience here in Memphis, what do you take back?
Well, it's kind of awe-inspiring to be here. And again, I think, the Grizzly, the Civil Rights Museum, and all the other sponsors who made this possible, because this keeps Dr. King's legacy alive. And, I was just sitting here thinking, in the world we need today, judge me by the content of my character, not by the color of my skin. And those words resonate loud and clear with me.
This has been a wonderful conversation. It is a conversation.
You're not wrapping this up, are you?
Yes.
Why?
It's on live TV, Bill. You're familiar perhaps with live TV?
Oh my gosh. Am I ever?
But this is a fabulous conversation, a conversation that will continue to go on. And we would invite you to have these conversations in your local communities with your peers, with your coworkers, because we can have this conversation today, but it's about taking this conversation, taking it into the community, and turning it into action if we are going to have positive change the way that Dr. King suggested and advocated. And I would like to thank the Hyde Family Foundation for their continued sponsorship of this great event. Pitt and Barbara, thank you so much. You've been great friends to the Grizzlies and obviously to the city of Memphis, and also a thank you to the National Civil Rights Museum for all that they have done. This has grown from a basketball game into a weekend celebration in commemoration of the life and work of Dr. King. So,
Can we thank the NBA too?
We will thank the NBA, because on behalf of the NBA, the Grizzlies, the City of Memphis, Shelby County, the National Civil Rights Museum, and all of us on stage, we appreciate you being here, and again, hoping that you take this conversation back into your local communities, because it is so very, very vital.
Can we thank Wayne Embry too? Can we thank Wayne Embry?
Well, we just thanked everybody here on stage. Now, at this point, Bill, this is where I tell everybody that the game starts at 4:30.
Really?
Grizzlies and Pelicans, presented by your Mid-South Ford dealers, and you can watch it on Fox Sports Southeast. But we want you to be in your seats early, because that is when the Sports Legacy Awards will be presented to these 4 outstanding people. So make sure that you're in your seats early. They certainly deserve your support and a hearty round of applause. So again, thank you so much for being here. Congratulations on your award, and we look forward to seeing you in pregame. That does it for the Earl Lloyd Sports Legacy Symposium. Now to our studio.